What's up, you guys? It's VDX. It's been a while, but we have some news from the Tekken team that have kind of, a lot of new tweets that have shed a bit of light on what's been happening prior to Season 2, what's going on at the Tekken development team, and I wanted to cover this in case you're not on Twitter or if you're not up to date on what's been happening. Harada tweeted out today, a while ago, this tweet in response to Knee. So I want to read Knee's tweet so you understand the context before we go into all of the Harada tweets. It's great information, and it honestly gives me a bit more hope going into the future patches for Season 2. I've been pretty skeptical vocally about the game not being fixed for a while because of just how far we swung in a different direction with the Season 2 launch patch. It's why there haven't been a lot of videos on the main channel. We've been doing mainly things on the second channel just because I feel like I can be more unfiltered there. On the main channel, I try to be a space where people who enjoy Tekken can still enjoy it, and people who want critical analysis can still get that. So I try not to upload anything that's just a straight emotional reaction. I save that for the second channel. But let's get into Knee's tweet and let's see what Harada said. So Knee put out this kind of venting tweet about Season 2. I'll scroll through and read it. Season 2 has a lot of homing and follow-up attacks, and homing moves are less risky now. When a homing attack succeeds, the reward is also quite high. Some characters' stacks are too powerful, while characters without stack mechanics feel very disadvantaged. He's talking about like buffs, like Claudio's Starburst, Jack's Big G, Zafina's Azazel Power, the installs and the stacks. Some guard break moves are also hard to deal with and carry little risk. Why do they keep making it harder to play defense? Honestly, there are so many homing attacks that it's getting harder to play the game like a true 3D game. Activating heat from a stance feels awkward and leads to ridiculous combos, and some characters can't even activate heat while in stance. Some characters can be played almost like spam with little risk, and their play still works. The size of the maps don't really matter. Most of the time, you can get to the wall with just 2 spins. I don't understand why heat recovery is on some characters. Like Lars, he does a combo, he starts recovering most of his meter. Law can heat burst, do his combo, and end up with a full bar of meter because of their heat regeneration. Meanwhile, other characters consume heat so quickly that it disappears almost instantly. Now, I'm not here to downplay my characters, but you'll notice it if you play Steve. Putting that out there. Meanwhile, it happens with a lot of characters, okay? To be serious, like, some characters have egregious heat recovery, and other characters just seem to run out of heat. And there seems to be no standard for it. It's just what they decided for those characters. Meanwhile, okay, we talked about that. I think these things lower the overall quality of the fighting game. I don't want to speak negatively about the game, but it's stressful to play, hard to enjoy. And I agree. They have really set a vision for how they want us to play, and there's not a lot of ways outside of that. You have to use the big homing moves, you have to use the big heat moves. You don't really get to play a lot of defense if you don't want to. Brian players are defensive counter hit players. That's what they like to do. But Brian's new offensive moves are so good, you're pretty much forced to use it unless you want to lose. And if you're a competitive player, you're not going to do suboptimal strategies, you know? Anyways, Harada responds to Knee's tweet. I've confirmed my perception of this matter with the battle and tuning teams. They seem to understand your frustrations and are working to improve, so please give them a little more time. Now, this is a big deal. This is a direct acknowledgement from the development team of concrete ideas and complaints from a professional player. So that's a big deal to get actual acknowledgement about that, right? Maybe if you come from other esports titles, you're used to this level of communication, but I don't think this is a standard thing, especially from a Japanese development team. So this is pretty good. Harada elaborates. My post was a bit wordy on this matter. To be precise, the battle and tuning team has submitted the first ROMs of the fix for this. I'm assuming the first versions. And the first phase of it will be introduced in the May update. Furthermore, after that, there will be another update in June that will be related to the defensive side of the game. So if you don't know, this is recorded on May 8th, and mid-May was the rough timeline for a patch after EVO Japan to improve on the disaster of the Season 2 launch. This is the first confirmation we have of what the content will be. Again, talking about Knee's complaints here, but also the acknowledgement that June will be related to the defensive side of the game. Now, here's where we get new details on what happened in the development, and this was very surprising to read. Tekken 8 was challenging in some aspects with a new team for battle and tuning, but we have returned the team structure to the members of the past. So this is something I did not know. I didn't know that they had put in a new battle and tuning team. We kind of assumed it was the same team from before under Nakatsu's vision. People have been memeing about that nonstop, that under Murray's vision, but we have confirmation that it's a new team. From what I hear by word of mouth, this new team started in late Tekken 7. This is not official information. This is just what I've heard. In addition, the director Nakatsu, who we all know and love, is now able to check and approve all tuning in detail. He was short on time as general manager, but now he gives final approval for every detail of battles and tuning. Now, this makes a lot of sense. This makes a lot of sense, and I want to elaborate on this more. But there are so many changes in Season 2. The main man famously said, this is my favorite quote that I've heard from him, is that the Season 2 patch feels like one guy is trying to put out a bunch of fires with water, and a dude right behind him is following and pouring gasoline on all the fires. Because there are some changes in the patch that make a lot of sense. They really adjust the character's strengths and feel in tune with like what makes the character difficult to fight against, unfun to fight against, not just from a balance perspective, but from a game design perspective. And it's hard. We can't point direct fingers. We can't like claim who was doing what, but this makes a lot of sense that Nakatsu may have not looked at every little detail, and that's how we got all these crazy Season 2 changes. As you all know, Nakatsu, originally comes from the fan community and was a writer for game magazines and strategy articles, and was also in charge of battles and tuning for Tag 2 and 7. So I don't think there's anything to worry about in the future. This blew my mind. So if you don't know, Nakatsu is actually his gamer tag. He's talked about this before. That was what he was known as when he was playing Tekken. And I didn't know that he was in charge of balance for Tag 2 and 7. If you've never played Tag 2, the adjustments they made from Tekken 7 or from Tekken 6 to Tekken Tag 2 were really cool. Like Lars as a character had a lot of quality of life changes while still not being pushed way over the top. He was a really strong character in Tag 2 and in Tekken 6. But this kind of implies that there are people in the development team who do know what's going on and what made Tekken really cool. And I want to show evidence of that from a Nakatsu tweet. You might not have seen this before, but he released this alongside the pre-season 2 press releases. So we'll go through this in a second. So he vouches for Nakatsu, said he's part of the community. He's been playing Tekken for a long time. He gets it. Now he's going to look at every single change. There's a quote tweet here. You don't need members of the past. You outright need an entire new team, including you, Murray, and Nakatsu. The identity of Tekken has gone down the toilet because of your arrogance and greed. Crazy call out, if you ask me, but reflects probably a lot of the community sentiment. Harada, in parentheses, says, so that's what happened with that new team. I don't know if he's talking about them being replaced, as in the new team was intended to replace him, Murray, and Nakatsu. That's how I read his tweet, is that they were trying to do this. They're trying to pass Tekken on to the next generation. It just obviously didn't go very well, which is why they're returning to the old team structure. Also, I already know that you don't need me for much longer. I've been trying to resolve this for the last few years. That's why I read it like that, is because Harada has been trying to get out and trying to pass Tekken on and have people carry it on without him. People have come in support of him after that crazy tweet. They said, don't leave the game direction, Harada. You add a necessary essence to Tekken that will be sorely missed if you're gone. Please do not let the loud Twitter minority get to you on this matter. And Harada has a really level-headed take here. He said, that's just the way the world works. The world is quiet around me when I have a good title evaluation, but then I have a bad evaluation and I am called greedy or arrogant. I understand this because I've experienced it several times before. That's the way it is. Another person says, what pisses me off the most about every video game community is that they only love you while you satisfy them. Once they are upset about something, your decades of life's work and legacy become meaningless to them. No respect for decades of your work. And he, again, says that's just how it works. What's a little different is that in like single-player RPGs, you can have a constant rating from the time of release usually, but competitive games have different ratings later on in their lifespan depending on the time of the year, and that's what makes it difficult to make fighting games. As a little nugget to the Lee fans, he directly says the battle team is working on fixing Lee too. Lee has a lot of consistency issues. They don't really know what direction they want to take Lee in, is the best way to put it. He was clearly a like counter hit poking character in previous Tekkens. I'm thinking like Tekken 5, Tekken 6, Tekken Tag 2. And then from Tekken 7 and 8, they kind of got really confused about his identity. I think in Tekken 7, his identity was actually still pretty clear. He just got really powered up. But Tekken 8, they don't know what they want to do with him. And I think that's what people are rightfully complaining about, because in terms of power level, outside of the consistency issues, Lee has a lot of strong buffs and improvements. It's just not the lead that I think lead players want to play, which is the same with Steve. Steve is not the same character. Brian is not the same character that people picked up them to play, or the reason why they picked the character up in the first place. Let's talk about Nakatsu, right? So I've alleged that he knows what he's talking about, that he comes from Tag 2 and 7, he offers good balance, and now that he gets to approve everything, things might be better. This is why I think that. So this, for context, this tweet is about the new sidestep changes that came with Season 2. Okay, so showing that you can now sidestep to the foreground, and he compares the Season 1 sidestep to the Season 2 sidestep. What impressed me, or kind of impressed me is a crazy way to put it. What blew me away was when we were talking about this sidestep change with other competitive players, we talked about it mainly from like force crouch situations and neutral situations. But we never, in my conversations, we never talked about it like this, where you block the first hit of a string and then sidestep the follow-up. This is a use case of the new sidestep that I have never thought of. And this is some high-level stuff. We do this for, say, like Law's back 1-2-2 string. If you haven't seen my Law drill video, there's certainly a thing about blocking strings and then sidestepping the follow-ups. That's real. But never blocking a low and then sidestepping to the foreground, which is what Kazuya does here. He blocks the first hit and then sidesteps to the foreground with the new Season 2 sidestep to dodge the follow-up. This is an insanely sweaty clip. For Nakatsu to tweet this shows that he is considering Tekken and the defensive options at a solidly high level. So the idea, this kind of rumor going around, or this narrative that there was a new balance team that doesn't really understand Tekken, and now that Nakatsu is able to look at every single change and approve every single change, I genuinely do feel a bit more hopeful. And if you've been following my content, you'll know that I've been very skeptical about the Season 2 direction and going forward. So the downside is I don't like being on the hook waiting for, are we going to have a good patch? Do we have to wait another month? I don't like that. But what I do like is that they clearly saw an issue. They've done restructuring to address this issue. It's not just adding new patches with the same staff. It's trying to get the people in charge who made good changes before, right? So that's basically the news. I think that we're moving in a fantastic direction. But at the same time, with the whole betrayal of trust where they said there's defensive changes coming out and then we got a very offensive patch, this is a situation where we're going to have to see actual action. I think we're unfortunately in a situation where the community probably won't respond to words very well, but we need action. Maximilian, dude, welcome. There was a massive communication management issue between teams, 100%. Them acknowledging that publicly for a Japanese company is insane. And that, again, is where I think they're really going out of their way to establish more goodwill. This is highly unusual to directly say we're changing teams to try to address their concerns. We're bringing back old people. You know, I think that's highly unusual. And it just shows that really for how much heat Harada and Nakatsu and Murray get, there is a shared love of Tekken, and I think that it actually does make sense to me that it's an organizational issue. They're trying to move to a new team, pass on the torch, and they don't set up the new devs for success. From what I understand, again, this is word of mouth, this is not confirmed. A lot of outsourcing was done for Tekken 8's like QA testing, and I don't know about the balance and tuning, but there's a lot of outsourcing done. And Tekken is one of those games where there's so much depth that if you try to look at it at a surface level and just make changes based on what you see on Twitter or based on what you see at the vast majority of gameplay levels, it's just not going to capture the depth and the nuance of the game. So it does take people with a lot of expertise. It does take people with a history with the series to make changes that can bring in new players and ease the quality of life difficulties of the game while also not kind of completely overturning everything that made Tekken great. And Nakatsu has a good track record, I think, of this. When he talks about the practice mode changes, he thinks like a fighting game player. He wants us to be able to reset the stage position very quickly. He wants to be able to record more defensive options. Nakatsu, every time he's talked on a Tekken Talk about the practice mode changes, it feels like he really does play the fighting games. And Maximilian says here, Nakatsu's a director. He's not specifically on the gameplay things. And you can't have every small gameplay thing go through a director. That's a massive waste of his time who's working on an entire game with hundreds of people needing his approval. So it's clear that they saw what Season 2 did, and they said, okay, even though Nakatsu is general director of everything, gameplay, visuals, VFX, sound, like everything has to go through him, from what I understand, they're recognizing that there is a priority on the actual gameplay changes, which maybe sounds crazy in retrospect to some people. Like, they weren't thinking about the gameplay changes, but I think the truth of the matter is when you're developing a game, there's just so much to do, you know? So this video I'm making now just to kind of share that I'm feeling a bit better about the game based on what they're sharing here. They've gone kind of countercultural as Japanese devs, acknowledging fault, acknowledging restructuring, and inspiring a bit more faith in their direction and their team outside of just, we're going to make changes, please wait. The director seemed like he knew what was involved in the patch, was communicating it as such, and was in line with what was expected. And suddenly the characters are crazy. It's a management communication problem. And I completely agree. Everything, interviews, the direction of late season 1, everything Nakatsu was saying implied that they were moving in this positive direction. You have to wonder if he was as caught off guard by what was finally shipped as the player base was. And again, this doesn't really excuse it, because if you're the one directing, it should probably be something that you are paying attention to. But it does inspire some hope in me that somebody who's been in the series since, like, working on the series since Tag 2 and playing it even before, is now going to have his fingers in the dirt, for lack of a better term, right? He's going to be in there approving the changes. Nobody's perfect. No single pro's opinion is perfect. My opinions are imperfect, and Nakatsu's opinions are going to be imperfect too. But that expertise is kind of irreplaceable at this point, and we really need that. So I'm hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful. It's painful to be this hopeful. I'm tired of not feeling good about Tekken. You know, it's a game. I've been trying other games. I've been trying to get into other games, but nothing really hits like Tekken. And so I really want that spirit of the game to be captured again. And you guys know me. If you've been following the channel, I love welcoming new players. I don't think shattering the identity and tearing up the foundation of your game is necessary to welcome new players. I think there is a middle ground that definitely can be reached. It's why I make my channel the way it is because I want new players to be able to appreciate what makes Tekken cool, not turn Tekken into just another fighting game where we have different avatars all doing the same thing. You know what I mean? I've rambled for a long time. I hope you enjoyed this little update. The mid-May patch, we don't have a specific release date, but we can assume it's probably coming in the next week, maybe week and a half. And then we have the June patch after. If I'm being realistic, I don't think the game will be fully fixed for quite some time, maybe near Evo, but a structural team change is probably one of the best things that could be done to get things working again more quickly. Maximilian said, 100% it's an error on his part. It's not disregarding his involvement. It's acknowledging that a problem happened between teams and they want to fix it. This makes perfect sense. Yeah. I think that's a great level-headed, informed take on it. You know, and I appreciate Max sharing his thoughts here. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments below if you've enjoyed this. Leave a like if you like this kind of content. Hopefully we can get a nice, competitively viable Tekken again, and I would love to make more educational content. I would love to do more pro analysis, and I want to do it authentically. I don't want to put up a video where I'm being negative and it's just a bummer for everybody. So we're hoping for the game to get better and that we can be back. That's the goal. Thanks, everybody. Catch you in the next one. Peace.